I have to say, Chris, I'm just so pleased that we have a chief executive of a really important energy company here, and I'm really grateful to you for coming. So thank you very much. I've got 3 or 4 questions I'm going to ask Chris, and I know he wants to take some questions as well from all of you, so please start sending them in. And Chris, I'm going to start with what I think is the really obvious one, but you know, when you think about the energy transition, and you can see what people have just said in the poll, how do you think the energy transition can be a force for good, and what do we need to say to people who think it's just not happening?
Look, I mean, first of all, Greg, it's a great pleasure to be here, and you know, thank you to the whole team at the Chamber of Commerce for the invitation. So, and it's great to be here and spend some time with you. So, I mean, look, we'd completely agree with the results of the poll. Is the first thing. I mean, we're in the business of the energy transition. We have been delivering the energy transition for our customers, for cities, for communities, and we have been for some time. So we'd completely agree with the results of the poll. We did some polling of our own very recently with YouGov, and it's quite interesting. So and it relates to the place-based questions. So you know, what the polling told us in essence was that, you know, a significant majority of people in the UK, contrary to what you might see in some of the press, a significant majority of people in the UK, you know, believe that we need to accelerate the pace of the energy transition. A significant majority of people in the UK believed that the energy transition, that the transition to a renewable energy system could deliver benefits for them and for their community. But what was really telling was that I think it was only 8% of people, and this was a poll of 10,000 people in the UK, so a pretty good sample size. Only 8% of people in the UK believed that they and their community were benefiting today from the delivery of the energy transition here. So people want it, people get the benefits, but the vast majority of people don't feel that those benefits are flowing to them. And that is a fundamental issue that collectively we need to address here. What would I do to accelerate the energy transition here in the UK? I do one thing, which is, you know, put as much effort and as much focus on the electrification and decarbonisation of consumption as we're currently putting into the electrification and the decarbonisation of production.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. And in a minute, we're going to talk about what that looks like. But let me, if I may, just ask you to say a bit more then about E.ON. E.ON is perceived to be a leader in this space. You have established a kind of leadership credential. What is it that E.ON is doing itself to accelerate the energy transition? And in a sense, what's the record that you want to stand by here?
I mean, you know, E.ON's business in the UK is part of the E.ON Group, which is one of Europe's largest electricity companies, and our focus is on making the energy transition work for customers and for our societies. We do 2 things really. We invest in, we operate, and we develop energy networks around Europe. Well, sadly, not significantly in the UK. We're Central and Eastern Europe's main transmission and distribution network operator. And you know, here, particularly in the UK, we do 2 things really. So we, you know, we support 6 million residential customers. We serve you know, we serve 300,000 small businesses in the UK. The large and medium-sized businesses we serve represent about 14% of the UK's GDP, and we invest in energy infrastructure that is in some shape or form connected to customers. You know, that's just an overview of what we do. In terms of how we're trying to accelerate the energy transition, then you know, it's, you know, one is unlocking the value, helping customers unlock the value that their consumption has in a more flexible, decentralized, disaggregated energy system. What does all that mean? So really simply, you know, conceptually, a customer's consumption should have the same value in a future energy system as the production of a power station. And that means if you can shift the time at which you use energy, if you can shift the way in which you consume energy, if you can offer that flexibility back to the energy system, then what you're doing is you're ultimately reducing the overall system cost, you're reducing the volume of investment and the returns on that that need to be made on that investment to decarbonise our energy system, because you're providing critical flexibility back to the system, which is super important as you decarbonise and as you get predominance of renewables. And what you see in other markets, so if you go to Australia, for example, which is probably about 5 to 10 years ahead of the UK market, you know, you see a market where value has flowed from the producer, from the upstream to the downstream, to the customer, you know, and you see customers who are able to provide that flexibility to shift their consumption, who own energy assets in the home or in their business, you know, and you sit there and you go through bills of Australian consumers where energy is an income, not a cost.
Yeah.
And, you know, so what we're trying to do is to bring some of that innovation, some of the investment in that technology into the market in the UK, because actually when you look at the construct of the market in the UK, although it's not where we would want it to be if we're self-critical, it's actually one of Europe's most developed and most advanced markets for that type of demand-side flexibility. So, but through things like the partnership that we have with Amber, through the partnership, the investment that we make in startups like Naked Energy and Illume, a long list of them, you can bring some of that technology into the UK market, you can unlock some of that value, and then ultimately you can do what we absolutely have to do, which is deliver a sustainable energy system, which in a way which is, you know, energy is both more sustainable and more affordable for everybody, not just the affluent few in our society.
Chris, this is a brilliant answer, and I'm going to check whether the idiot understood it, right? So I think you're saying that every household and every business customer should have battery capability at home or in the office or in store, that they should have a technology system that allows them to consume energy when it's cheap and use it when it's more expensive. They should have a billing mechanism that allows them to send energy back into the grid when it makes sense to do that. And they should accompany that with smart energy usage, with great insulation, with energy efficiency measures. Is that right? Is that what we're talking about?
That's absolutely what we're talking about, Greg.
Yeah.
The first part in terms of everybody needs a battery.
Yeah.
I'd love everybody to have a battery.
Right.
But you don't actually need a battery in order to be able to do that in the home. So, you know, only a few weeks ago, we launched a residential proposition, which is time of use for all, which enables any customer to shift their demand and shift their consumption and benefit from that in terms of affordability. We can then aggregate that demand shifting, and then we can offer that flexibility back to the system operator, which has system benefits. We'll soon be launching the same proposition in the UK for small businesses. And you know, just picking up on the, you know, so absolutely yes, how you get there is super important, because not everybody can afford the upfront capital cost of a battery or solar. You know, so how do we enable people who can't afford the upfront capital cost of those things? How do we enable businesses that can't afford the upfront capital cost of those things to benefit is really important.
And you're saying, I think, that E.ON can platformize some of those things so that individual companies and households don't need to own it. You can provide it for them as a platform.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, energy, so a couple of things. So energy as a service. So we've got some pilots going on around the country to provide energy as a service. So these are fundamentally subscription models that enable people and businesses to access those sort of assets without the upfront capital cost. If I look at the Amber proposition, which we're starting to bring to market here in the UK, then if you can get those assets into the hands of people, you can get the technology platform into people's hands. And effectively what you're doing is enabling the individual home or the small business to participate directly in the energy market. Our income is through the sale of the technology subscription. The customer takes all of the benefit of the direct participation in the energy market.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, in a minute, I want to come back to one of the questions that was put to Andy, which was about really what is it that we can do at the city and the regional level. But just before we do that, it seems to me that what you're describing is two very different kinds of energy systems. So the fossil fuel-based energy system is one that's highly concentrated and highly centralized in a small number of locations that are producers, and then the rest of the world are purchasers, and they're held to ransom by the producers, if I may put it that way. Whereas the energy system you're describing is distributed, it's multinodal, it's bottom up, it's accessible to all sorts of people, and you can have a multiplicity of different players with a different kind of competition dynamic within it. Firstly, have I understood it? And secondly, what do we need to do to persuade everyone that the second system is better than the first one?
I mean, yes, you've absolutely understood it, but I think there is a choice here. So you can choose for a path in which you simply try to replicate the system that we've got today and just swap out fossil for renewable generation. My belief, our belief would be if you try to do that, then you will deliver a decarbonised, you will deliver clean power, but you will not deliver it in such a way that it is both sustainable and more affordable for people, for businesses. And if you take that path, then ultimately you will fail because you cannot, it's the how that matters, how you get there that matters. Yes, in the long term, a renewable power system is clearly a cheaper power system than a fossil-based one because there's no input cost. But in the long period of time between now and then, how you get there matters. And if you choose for a path that makes it more expensive or doesn't deliver the bill savings that are required for people who are struggling and businesses that are struggling today, you will fail. Therefore, you have to choose for the second path, which is the one that you described, where you have a more decentralized, more disaggregated energy system. Because what you see in markets that are further down that road is that value flows from the upstream, value flows from the producer to the consumer, and it flows inexorably to the consumer. And that is a far more inclusive energy system than the exclusive fossil energy system that we've all grown up with, where capital is concentrated in a relatively small number of hands and in the hands of a relatively small number of actors. And you get a far more inclusive energy system as a consequence.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm really grateful.